my name's Gabby, and the book that I'll be reviewing is called Lailah's Lunchbox, which was written by Reem Faruqi. The cultures that are kind of having a conflict in this story are the Muslim culture of the Middle East and the culture in the United States. Practicing Muslims celebrate a holiday called Ramadan. During Ramadan, Muslims fast from the hours of sunrise to sunset for the entire month. And this takes place in the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, so it can change year to year. There are practicing Muslims in the United States who celebrate Ramadan. It's just not something that is universally or maybe as readily practiced as it is in the Middle East. So that's why there might be a conflict here. In the exposition of our book, we're introduced to our main character, Lailah. Lailah's a little girl who just recently moved from Abu Dhabi, which is the capital of the United Arab Emirates in the Middle East. She moved from Abu Dhabi to a small city called Peachtree City, which is in Georgia. Lailah doesn't feel like Peachtree City is her home. She still feels like her home is Abu Dhabi and she's missing it a lot. She really misses her two friends, Hind and Ishrat. Even though Lailah really misses her friends and doesn't feel quite at home yet, she's really excited because she gets to participate in the fasting portion of Ramadan for the first time this year. She really wanted to participate last year with her friends Hind and Ishrat, but her parents felt like she wasn't big enough or strong enough. So this year is going to be her first year participating with her family, and she's really excited about that. During the first morning of Ramadan, Lailah's mom wakes her up very early in the morning so she can participate in sehri. Sehri is a meal that Muslims eat before sunrise to kick off their daily fast during Ramadan. So Lailah wakes up and eats a really big breakfast with her family and then goes back to sleep for a little bit since it's pretty early in the morning. After that, Lailah starts walking to school. She feels really light and swingy and carefree because she's not carrying her lunchbox, and she's really excited to be participating in the fasting. But once Lailah gets on the bus, she starts to get worried. She takes out the note that her mom wrote for her teacher explaining that Lailah was going to be participating in Ramadan, which means that she won't be bringing lunch to school. And now Lailah's starting to think about the fact that she's not bringing a lunch to school. What if nobody knows what Ramadan is? And what if she's the only person who isn't eating lunch? And she's afraid that nobody's going to understand. So now she's starting to worry about things, and this is where we can see where a conflict might start to arise. Lailah sits in her classroom all morning worrying, and she doesn't give the note that her mom wrote to her teacher, Mrs. Penworth. Then it's time for the kids to go to lunch. Lailah goes to the cafeteria with all of her friends and just sits down. Her teacher, Mrs. Penworth, notices that she doesn't have a lunchbox in front of her and asks her why. Lailah can't get out any words, so then Mrs. Penworth tells her to go get a sandwich from the cafeteria. As Lailah is sitting there, trying to think of what to say, with no words coming out, her friends start offering her parts of their lunch. Lailah tries to explain to them that she's fasting and participating in Ramadan, but she just can't get any of the words out. Lailah gets really overwhelmed by all of her friends offering her food and her teacher, Mrs. Penworth, telling her to get lunch. She doesn't know what to say, so she starts feeling panicked, and she sneaks out of the lunchroom and runs to the library. Once Lailah gets to the library, she runs into the librarian, Mrs. Carmen. Mrs. Carmen asks her why she's not in lunch and if she's okay. And Lailah just starts to unload. She explains to Miss Carmen that she's fasting and participating in Ramadan, and that her mother wrote her a note and she didn't give it to her teacher, and everyone was asking her if they wanted food, and she didn't know how to explain why, and she really missed her friends Hind and Ishrat, and she just went on and finally unloaded all of those feelings that she was feeling to her teacher, Mrs. Carmen, the librarian. Mrs. Carmen talks with Lailah about Ramadan and how excited she must be. Lailah agrees. She's very excited, but she doesn't know how to talk about it. Mrs. Carmen shares with Lailah that when she's nervous about things, she likes to write it down before talking about it. So Lailah begins writing a note to her teacher, Mrs. Penworth. She explains to Mrs. Penworth that she didn't forget her lunchbox, just that she's participating in Ramadan. She explains that during Ramadan, she and her family fast from the morning until the night, from sunrise to sunset, and that she won't be bringing a lunch. She also explains that her mom wrote a note and she's going to include it with her note that she's writing. She also wrote a poem about Ramadan on the bottom and really hopes that her teacher's going to like it. After she writes her note, she brings it to the Mrs. Penworth's classroom and leaves it on her desk and really hopes that it's going to clear things up and that she'll understand and that she'll like her poem. The next day when Lailah comes in, she's still feeling worried. She doesn't feel good about things yet, and she wonders if Mrs. Penworth understands what Ramadan is and if she liked her poem at all. Now it was time for the class to head to lunch again. Mrs. Penworth walked over to Lailah and pat her on the back gently and handed her a note. And her note said, "Dear Lailah, I enjoyed your lovely poem about Ramadan. I'm impressed you're fasting. What a special time for you. You and your family must be thrilled. Would you share your poem with the class today after lunch? You could go to the library this month instead of the cafeteria. Mrs. Carmen is excited to see you. Sincerely, Mrs. Penworth. P.S. Mrs. Carmen told me you missed your friends. I hope you keep making new friends with our class." So all of Lailah's concerns were addressed in Mrs. Penworth's note. She even told Lailah that she was sorry she was missing her friends and hoped that she would continue making friends here. So now Lailah has no need to worry that no one's going to understand what Ramadan is and that no one's going to understand why she isn't bringing her lunch. So I think all of her concerns are now at ease. After reading her note from Mrs. Penworth, Lailah's really excited. She's twirling and excited and happy, and she's making her way to the library to hang out with Mrs. Carmen during lunch. She's really excited to share her poem after her friends have lunch, and she can't wait to tell her family about what happened today when she has iftar with them later. Iftar is the meal that practicing Muslims have during Ramadan after sunset to close their daily fast. So at the end of the story, things are pretty much just wrapped up, and Lailah feels good, and she's probably feeling a lot better about living in Peachtree, Georgia. I feel that the book Lailah's Lunchbox does provide a really good example of positive cultural pluralism. All the adults in the book are really supportive of Lailah when she opens up about Ramadan and fasting with her family. They acknowledge how exciting it must be and how special she must feel to be able to participate with her family. And her teacher even asked her to share her poem with her classmates, and it just shows that she wants her students to be exposed to other cultures and make Lailah feel like she's accepted within their culture. So I think it does a really good job of showing the merging of two cultures, or cultures mixing together and working cohesively. Even if they're different and they don't participate in the same things or they don't believe in the same things, the teacher is really showing Lailah that they appreciate her culture and they respect it, and that she thinks it's important that the other students know about it as well.